Welcome back to the Puddin' Creek Rod Shop. Now, I'd like to tell you about how many cups of coffee I've had this morning and all that other nonsense I usually tell you, but I don't have time today. You see, the little woman, she's headed over here very shortly to help me set the deck lid off the Bad Coupe. So I've got to get this support arm unbolted and off, and I've got to get the hinge bolts out and get everything ready before she gets here. Now that support arm looks like it's been ran over by a 56 Buick, but we'll fix it up good as new before we put it back on. Well, it didn't take long for the situation to turn into a situation. I guess you guys have noticed that happens pretty frequently here at the Puddin' Creek Rod Shop. It looks like back in the 1970s when they put this deck lid on, they evidently did not have the original 1932 Ford hinge bolts. So instead, they just took regular bolts, but they put them in backwards. They installed them from the deck lid side instead of from the body side. And I really have no idea how they did it, because that leaves no room whatsoever to get an open-end wrench on them, or a boxed-in wrench, or a socket. Right now, I'm trying a pair of needle-nose vice grips. That's how bad it's got right off the bat. You see, a 1932 Ford has these steel heavy plates here that bolt onto the body, and then you put the deck lid on the car with the hinges mounted to the deck lid. And then the final thing you do is you crawl up inside the body and you screw these hex head bolts into these steel plates, and the machined pivot, the shoulder that's machined on the end of those bolts, it screws right into the hinges on the deck lid, and that's what the deck lid hinges pivot on. And crawling up under the body like that, you've got plenty of room to screw those bolts in and out. But on this car, instead of using those special bolts with the shoulders turned down on them, they just used regular bolts, and they threaded them in from the deck lid side. And there's no room at all to get any kind of a wrench on the hex head. What I'm trying to figure out is how in the world did they get them in there to start with? This is the bracket. We can unhook the bracket, but it still goes through the body, so the bolt's got to come out no matter what. I already sprayed it with some deep creep, so I don't think it'll be hard to get out. It's just hand me that 9/16 wrench there. This one's got the bracket plus on it. You got the deck lid so it don't fall?
Yeah.
And rock tie. Hand me that bottle of deep creep. Let's spray that again. I know what you guys are thinking. Old Puddin' Creek, he sure uses a lot of that deep creep. I bet he's sponsored by Deep Creep. Well, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but if you're a Deep Creep executive and you're sitting at your desk at work, and instead of working, you're watching the Puddin' Creek Rod Shop on YouTube. Of course, if you're a corporate executive, I don't know why you'd be watching this nonsense, but if you are, and you want to sponsor Old Puddin' Creek, and you want to send me an 18-wheeler load of Deep Creep, I'll take it. Now, I found this skinny open-end wrench, and I can slide it on the head of the bolt, but there's no room to turn it any whatsoever. If you try to go down, it hits the body. If you try to go up, it hits the deck lid. We've got the deck lid up as high as we can get it. I cannot get a boxed-in wrench on it at all. It won't even start. I cannot get any kind of a socket on it at all. I've tried just about everything 4 or 5 times. Now, before you start typing your comments, Puddin' Creek, just grind some clearance on the wrench. I've already thought about that, but every bit of clearance that I could grind on this wrench is not going to be enough to turn the hex one flat, which is what I would need to do to get it on the next one, so that's not going to work. This is about the fourth time I've tried needle nose vice grips. There's not enough room to get them in there to do anything either. I think the bolts are kind of rusty, so it's not like they're loose in there. They're tight. I was having zero success whatsoever on the driver's side, so I moved over to the passenger side to give that one a try. My trusty assistant, she's holding the deck lid up to make sure it don't come crashing down and hit me in the back of the head. She said she wasn't really worried about the deck lid hurting my head. She was worried about it falling and my head messing up the deck lid. Now, whoever installed the deck lid back in the 70s, they made up some white plastic spacers, looks like maybe made of nylon or something, but the one they made on the driver's side is thicker than the one they made on the passenger side. So the passenger side here, it's leaving me a little bit more room to work. I mean, maybe we can have some success here. I'm taking the vice grips and turning it a little bit, and then I'm able to get a wrench on it and turn it a little bit, and just back and forth. What a headache. I had told the little woman at breakfast this morning, I just need you to stop by the shop for about 5 minutes. I'll have all the bolts out and everything ready, and all I need you to do is just help me set the deck lid off so I don't scratch the paint up on the Bad Coupe. Well, that must be how they got the bolts in. They had to make one of these nylon spacers about half the thickness of the other one, and that gave them a little more room to work over here. With the passenger side bolt completely out, now the little woman can wiggle the deck lid around, and maybe that'll give me enough clearance to get the driver's side bolt out. Oh yeah, that's gonna make a big difference. Maybe. Yeah. I got it loose enough with the wrench and the deep creep that I could switch to some long needle nose pliers and start working it out. What a nightmare. What a way to start the morning. And people wonder why it takes so long to restore these old cars. left the deck lid out in the sun for a few hours and let it get real good and dry inside and out. And then I made this hillbilly vacuum attachment for my shop vac, just using a piece of PEX hose and some painter's tape. And that way I can reach down in there and get any little bits of rust or dust or dirt or anything that might be left out. Wow, now that turned into a whole project. That was supposed to just be like a 5 or 10 or 15-minute little thing this morning. But I'm glad to have it off the car and have it cleaned up inside and out, get all the varmint mess out of the inside of it. And we'll clean the rain gutters around the trunk here and put new rubber in and seal up anything that's exposed metal. We're going to do a lot of work to this before we put that deck lid back on. But the reason I took the deck lid off was so that I could take it to town, to the paint store, and get some purple mixed up to match the purple that's inlaid there on the panels, the fogged-in purple, to go on the new engine block that our friend Doug is building. Now, I'm going to go ahead and load this into Grocery Getter, but I'm not taking it to town right this minute. I've got a lot of work to do in the shop today, and we don't live in town. It's a pretty good drive for us. We're kind of like Hank Jr. said in that old song. You remember when he said, "I live out in the woods, you see, just the woman and the kids and the dogs and me." Well, that's kind of how we live. So the next time I'm going to town for something, I'll take this in and I'll get our purple paint mixed up, and I'll probably get some of that blue mixed up to do a lot of touch-up on the body of the Bad Coupe. Now, those are soft elastic straps, so they should hold it in place and not let it move around, and they should not scratch up the paint. Plus, I put this microfiber towel right in the middle where all the friction will be. Now, I didn't record it, but I worked late last night restoring these carburetor studs. These are the ones that go up through the adapter plates and through the carburetors. And they, like everything else on this engine, had that white corrosion all over them. So I disassembled the nut from the stud and I wire brushed all the threads inside and out. And I checked everything to make sure the threads were good. I even ran a dye down over a couple of them that had bad threads. And then I reassembled them and applied a little bit of red Loctite. Now, I know all you old-time hot rodders and mechanics probably know way more about all the different types of Loctite than I do. But just for the beginners that are watching, a quick little tip here. I usually think of the red Loctite as permanent Loctite. In other words, put that on something that you don't really want to ever come back loose. And I think of the blue Loctite as temporary Loctite. If it's something that you're going to take apart sometime in the future and you don't want it to be impossible to get back apart, use the blue. This car had a lot of chrome on it. Even these fine thread nuts that screw down on the carburetor studs and the flat washers that go under them, they got chromed. But like everything else, they had that white corrosion all over them. So last night when I worked late, I took Mother's and cleaned all that up and got them shiny and ready to go back on. And I put them in this bag, and they'll go in the chrome pile. They'll go in the pile of finished parts that's ready to go up to the engine builder. For just a little bit of a protective coating on these studs, I'm going to hit them with a little bit of this Valspar Ultra Clear. I really don't know what this stuff is. It smells like lacquer. I think it's just clear lacquer. Anyway, I've used this stuff for years on metal and wood. It works great. I actually think I bought this particular can back in 2008 when I was building my house, and it's still good. It's so old that I guess a hole rusted out in the bottom of the can, and the Ultra Clear leaked out and formed a plug and sealed itself, and I still use it all the time. The other thing I like about this stuff is it has the old school spray nozzle. I call these the 70s spray nozzles. When I was a little kid or a teenager in the 1970s and I was building model cars or I was starting to build hot rods, you could go to Kmart and you could buy the cheapest spray paint on the shelf, the Kmart brand, for 79 cents a can, and it had this kind of spray nozzle and it sprayed perfect, the whole can. It worked like a dream. And now you go to Lowe's and you pay $9.99 for a can of Rust-Oleum with this big goofy white spray cap on it, and you spray it for a half a minute and all of a sudden it starts clogging up and stopping up and won't spray. I mean, it's very frustrating. Now, the other thing I like about this clear is it sprays out super thin so it doesn't build up in the threads and cause interference with the nuts. You know the reason that people have so much trouble with plating threads, chrome plating or zinc plating or cad plating or painting or powder coating? The reason is because the thickness of the coating is quadrupled on a thread. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say you apply a 1/1000th thick coating to a thread. Doesn't really matter what the coating is. It could be 1/1000th thick chrome plating or 1/1000th thick zinc plating or 1/1000th thick paint or powder coat. Doesn't matter. If you apply a 1/1000th thick coating to a thread, it does not change the thread diameter by 1/1000th like you would think. It changes it by 4/1000ths because your coating hits the V's of the thread in all four of these places. So it really closes up your thread fit by a factor of 4. It's like having 4/1000ths thick plating in there. And then if you plate the nut, you got a whole nother barrel monkeys to deal with. That's the reason so many people have so many problems with chrome plating and threaded holes and threaded studs or bolts, whatever. The next thing on the agenda are the carburetor adapter plates themselves. Now, these are not very bad. They have a little bit of gas stains on them, but that's about it. They don't have that white corrosion that all the other chrome and aluminum parts have. I don't really know what the difference is, but these are going to be a piece of cake to clean up compared to all the other parts. Chee bug. These 1970s carburetor adapters cleaned up super nice. I mean, they're as shiny as Linda Carter's uniform. I got all my Sunday learning, milking and churning, picking cotton, raising cane and baling hay. Boy, I miss Billy Joe Shaver. What about you guys? All right, let's get to work on this oil pan. Looks like we got some modifications here we've got to address right off the bat. Well, as you saw there, we've got a screw broken off in that baffle hole. Now, that's a cross baffle that's actually missing from this oil pan. I have one on the other oil pan that I bought that I could rob off of it and replace it if I needed to. But we've also talked about using a windage tray, so I'm not sure this hole will even be used. But I feel like we should get that broken screw out. I mean, we don't want to leave it in there and then be cruising down the highway and it comes out on its own and gets sucked up in the oil pump or becomes shrapnel in the motor. Now, getting this broken screw out is going to be a little tricky. You see, screws are made out of wire, kind of tempered wire, and then they're cold formed, so that kind of hardens them up. So when you try to drill them out, they're pretty hard. Not as hard as a piece of granite, but they're not soft. And what it's buried in is dead soft aluminum, and just the least little thing will eat that aluminum up. So if I try to drill it out with a hand drill, it's probably just going to jump all over the place and get side-goggling and eat that aluminum out and just ruin the hole where it can never be used again. What I want to do is try to get it in the milling machine so I can hold everything steady and use an end mill to cut it out. Now, if you're a machinist watching this right now, shoot, even if you're not a machinist and you're watching this right now, you're probably saying to yourself, what in the wide world of Mickey Mouse setups is this right here? Well, I have to be honest with you, I'm a little bit skeptical myself. As I'm clamping this up, I'm having visions of ER visits. I know what you all are thinking. Old Puddin' Creek's going to fire up that milling machine and run that end mill down in that hole, and that oil pan's going to break loose from this Mickey Mouse setup, and it's going to beat him to death before he can get away from it. Well, I'm not done yet. We're going to do a little bit more to this crazy setup. I will admit it is a crazy setup, but you got to think, I'm only going to be running a 1/8 inch end mill down in the aluminum hole and mill a little screw out. I mean, it's not like we're trying to remachine the whole oil pan. Now, these are the 1, 2, 3 blocks out of the machinist tools that Frank and Debbie gave us. You remember our trip to the mountains of Virginia, up around the Damascus, Virginia area, where we met Frank and Debbie, and they gave us a whole slew of machinist tools? Well, these are the 1, 2, 3 blocks right here. Oh, I know you guys are going to have comments about this. Yeah, that's what you're looking at, carpenter shims. We're going to shim it up. Those won't scratch up the aluminum on the oil pan. You got to remember, everything on this oil pan was curved and slanted. There's really nothing to do a traditional machinist setup, and you can't scratch any of it. So, I mean, it makes it tough to do any kind of a setup on it. Now, I'm just going to use a piece of 1/8 inch ejector pin just to locate the hole. I actually think this came out of the stuff that Frank and Debbie gave us also, but I'm just going to use this to eyeball it in the X and Y axis. I'm not trying to get super precise on this. I just need a general location. I'm going to use a used end mill on this. You never want to use a brand new sharp end mill to try to get out a broken screw. I mean, this is more blacksmith work than machine shop work. And yes, I'm just going to chuck the end mill up in a Jacobs chuck. I'm not going to switch over to a collet. We're just getting a broken screw out of an oil pan. We're not making parts for NASA this week. Well, I got the broke screw all machined out, and just as the end mill broke through the last little bit of the screw, it kind of pulled it up out of the hole. I didn't even have to dig the last piece out of the hole. It came up for me. All right, now I've installed a 832 tap into the milling machine, and I'm just going to put the milling machine spindle into neutral because I'm going to use the spindle to make sure the tap is lined up perfectly square to the part. I'm not going to use the motor on the machine. I'm just going to take my hand and rotate the drill chuck a little bit just to get the tap started 2 or 3 threads and to make sure it's perfectly straight and square. And then once I feel like it's started straight, I'll unchuck the drill chuck from the tap and raise the spindle up out of the way, and I'll switch over to a little manual tap wrench, just a little small one, and I'll finish tapping it by hand. Now remember, when you're tapping holes, you've got to stop and reverse the direction of the tap pretty frequently to break the chips. You don't just screw it clockwise all the way down in the hole. You screw it clockwise a little bit and then reverse it to break the chip and then go back to clockwise, etc. Now the first tap I ran down in there was a plug tap. Now we're ready to switch to a bottom tap. Let's talk about taps for a minute. There are three basic tap designs. There's a taper tap, a plug tap, and a bottom tap. Now, a taper tap has an extreme amount of lead on it. They're easy to get started crooked. I don't ever use those. I just throw those over a ravine. What I normally use, if it's a hole that's a through hole, is a plug tap. Now, if I'm doing a blind hole like the hole we just repaired, I'll go down in it with a plug tap as far as I can till the point hits the bottom, and then I'll switch over to a bottom tap and finish it out. The bottom tap has a flat bottom and only a few lead threads, and so it can screw all the way down real close to the bottom of the hole. Now, I did not have an 832 bottom tap in the shop, so I found this 832 taper tap that somehow didn't get thrown over a ravine, and I ground a bunch of the lead threads off of it, only left a few lead threads and a flat bottom I put on it, and I can use that for a bottom tap. That'll work just fine. Now, right now, I'm just running the tap down through the good threads I've already put in it with the plug tap, so I won't start reversing direction until I feel it start to cut the new threads in the very bottom of the hole. Now that I feel it cutting threads, you'll notice now I'm reversing a direction to break the chips. And be careful when you hit the bottom of the hole, don't break the tap off in the hole. Chee bug, that fits nice. There you go, thread repair on a 1970s Cal custom aluminum oil pan. I finally needed to make a run to town, so I decided to swing by the paint store and get the purple paint mixed up for the engine block. I carried the deck lid in for the Bad Coupe and put it on the counter, but our paint guy is swamped right now mixing paint for other customers, so I'm just walking up and down the aisles and killing time until it's my turn. Now, I don't know what kind of modern corporate paint store you've got in your town, but in our town, we've still got an old school paint store with an old school guy running it that really knows his paint and he knows how to take care of customers, and he's about the best at custom mixing and tinting and matching old paint that you're going to find. Does your local paint store have a Civil War cannon parked in the front window? I didn't think so. All right, we're back in the shop. I say let's get this oil pan wiped down and cleaned up. I don't know about you guys, but I am ready to start slinging some purple paint. Now, here's what I've decided to do with the old 1970s dried out, cracked blue paint that's down in between the fins of all these speed parts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to knock away any of the loose pieces that might come off, and I'm obviously going to clean them real good with wax and grease remover. I don't want any grease or anything like that down in their old buffing compound. That's got to go. They got to be nice and clean where the paint will stick to them. But I'm going to leave the old cracked paint down in the grooves, and I'm going to paint over top of them with this new purple paint. I just don't think cleaning it completely out and making them look like new speed parts is what we need to do on this car, because the whole body's going to have chipped and cracked paint and patina, and if we didn't have it in these fins, it just wouldn't match. We need to paint in between these fins to have the old chipped and cracked look, but we need them to be the proper color purple that they were in the magazine back in the 70s. Darling, you don't know my mind. I'm lonesome all the time. I was born to lose a drifter, you see. I've been a hobo and a tramp, my soul has done been stamped. Darling, you don't even know my mind today. Well, that's a good part about working for yourself. Nobody can fire you for singing on the job. You know, the great bluegrass legend Jimmy Martin, he once told a story about getting fired for singing on a job at a furniture factory in Morristown, Tennessee.
Started walking down the road, thumbing me a ride. Stopped by my granddad Martin's, borrowed $10 off of him to go to Morristown, Tennessee and get me a job in a factory. Then I got fired on the job. I was singing too much and everybody said I couldn't sing. So they fired me for singing on the job. So I went down to the Grand Ole Opry and met Bill Monroe and sung a couple of songs with him, and he hired me. Then I went back to Morristown, Tennessee and thanked the man for firing me. Told him he could listen in on Saturday night and hear me on the Grand Ole Opry with Bill Monroe.
Well, here's the purple paint I just got mixed up. I'm excited to get this open. Let's see what it looks like. It's Sherwin-Williams brand, single stage paint. I got a little dab of hardener to go with it. Let's get it. Now, that looks delicious. That right there with some vanilla ice cream, son. Now, this is not going to look exactly like those purple inlaid panels on the car. When I was at the paint store, he mixed it perfect. We compared it to the deck lid there, and he nailed it. He had it spot on. But when he got it spot on perfect, I asked him to add a little bit of pearl into it to give it some flip-flop. Those old original show car pictures, the actual photographs, they kind of look like the engine block had some flip-flop to it, had a little pearl in it. I'm not 100% sure, but this is an old 70s show car. It should have some pearl. It should have some flip-flop one way or another. Well, there it is, guys. What do you think? So I've got the old Street Rodder magazine centerfold picture laid out here beside the paint can. I want to compare the color now that we actually have the paint. I wonder if these fumes are as strong as the old lacquer. Son, that must be some good paint. Them fumes just about got me, but let's look at the color in this centerfold picture. Shoo-wee, I gotta quit breathing them paint fumes. They're making me as drunk as a wheelbarrow. Well, good googly moogly. It turned out pretty good. I'm satisfied with that. I'm not really a painter anyway. Well, there it is, guys. Bear in mind, it's got a little bit of pearl added to it, so it's not going to look just exactly like the inlaid panels. It's going to be a little more show car. All right, now we need to work quick. What we got to do is wipe off the top of those fins so the chrome is exposed. I'm going to use some old t-shirt material and some lacquer thinner. Now, I've tried different rags and stuff over the years. Some people use Q-tips. This is just my method, but this is the way I do it. I use t-shirt material so it doesn't have any fuzzies on it to get into the paint. And I stretch a piece of t-shirt material real tight around my index finger. And then I put a little lacquer thinner on it, holding it tight. And then I just start wiping the paint off. Now, again, you don't want to let it dry. You want to get it while it's wet. This is drying pretty fast. I used medium fast reducer, so I probably should have got slow dry, but that's okay. We'll get it off. The lacquer thinner takes it right off. Now, if you get it when it's dead wet and it hadn't dried any at all and it's not drying fast, just about anything will take it off, just regular paint thinner or even wax and grease remover. But this has hardener in it and it's medium dry reducer, so it's drying pretty fast. So the lacquer thinner will take it off. But the secret to it is keep turning your rag. When you wipe a little bit of paint off on your rag, then move to a clean spot. And when it stops taking the paint off, put a little more lacquer thinner on your rag and then wipe the paint. And once the paint's built up on the rag, move it around. You can't wipe paint off with a dirty rag. You have to have a clean spot. So you just keep moving to a clean spot, wet with lacquer thinner. Now, your t-shirt material has to be wet with lacquer thinner, but not dripping wet. You don't want any drops of lacquer thinner to go down into the paint you're going to keep. So it's got to be just damp enough to take the paint off, but not so damp that it drips or runs. It's, it has to be just about perfect. It's kind of a slow, tedious process that needs to be done quickly, if that makes any sense. Now, these end spots here are the hardest ones to deal with. Where I had that taped off, it leaves a purple line across there, and we can't have that. We've got to blend it in with the polished chrome. So what I'll have to do is kind of wipe that out with the lacquer thinner to blend it, and then I usually just take a brush and kind of touch it back in. You'll see here in a minute. That's the only way I've found to do it. It's just about impossible any other way. I don't know about you guys, but untaping something you've just painted is about the most satisfying thing ever. What do you think? Now, I've got all the fins wiped down and the chrome exposed except for these two outside ones. I had the tape going kind of halfway on them, so they're half painted and half not. So I still need to wipe those down with lacquer thinner. Now, you're probably saying, what happened to your glove pudding, Creek? Well, the lacquer thinner kept eating the fingers out of them, and now I'm out of them. Luckily, I just like these two outer fins, so I can wipe those down and get my hands washed and get out of the lacquer thinner. Don't anybody tell OSHA on me. Now, here's these spots we have to touch up that I was telling you about. When you tape it off and you spray it, you get a hard purple line across there. So when I wipe them down, I'm not too particular about these areas. If it wipes a little bit of that purple out of the ends, I don't care, because that's pretty much what you got to do to get rid of the purple line, to get rid of the hard line anyway. And then I just come in with a little brush and just touch them up. It's no big deal, and the paint levels out, and you can't really tell. Here on the front side, it's the same song, second verse. I just wipe it out with lacquer thinner so I can blend it back in with the brush. Well, that's our show for this week. We sure appreciate you guys coming back every Monday to hang out with us and see what kind of a mess we've got ourselves into this week. We hope you're enjoying this series on the Bad Coupe. Some of you have asked, when are we going to get back on the Ojai Coupe? That's on the schedule. When are we going to work on the 28 Ford Roadster? That's on the schedule. Some of you want to see us get back on the Asheville Custom. We're going to work on all those cars, but right now we're knee-deep on the Bad Coupe. If you enjoyed the show, take a minute to leave us a comment. It really helps with the algorithm. And give us a thumbs up if you got one. And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.